Hey, what's up everybody and welcome back to News Dose. And there's been a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation to start 2023 about an eventual Nintendo Switch successor. This has been much talked about, and it does seem like there's a shift among the gaming world, expecting Nintendo to move on to their next device relatively soon. Well, we got some more information that might say otherwise. Now, two things are happening here that appears to kind of co-align with one another, and we're going to cover both of those today. Also, there's been a lot of talk about both Obsidian Entertainment and Bethesda being under the Xbox umbrella. This is kind of that perfect pairing, and there's been a lot of questions about whether the two will do some type of big partnership together in the future. Well, Obsidian did talk about that today, and some very interesting things were said. So we're going to get into all that as well. Let's just go and jump right into things, though, starting off with the future of Halo. With Microsoft laying off thousands of employees, 343 was one of the most impacted game studios, though as to its exact impact, that is a little bit of an unknown. However, there was a major rumor making the rounds today claiming to know these things, as they claimed that 1/3 of 343 staff was let go, which did not line up with what we had heard yesterday. I'll come back to that in just a second. They also claimed that they scrapped any future single-player content that was in development. And lastly, that 343 is set to become more of a coordinator of the franchise, rather than being the main studio to work on it going forward. This was posted up by Spartan Bathrobe, which apparently has a decent track record with leaks, though. And here's the thing, they might be viewed a little bit different today, as this rumor has already been debunked. Really, the reason that we're talking about this today is because of how fast this rumor spread, and people, they're kind of freaking out about it. So if you previously heard this rumor somewhere, which I'm sure a lot of you all did, you can just go ahead and disregard it. Jason Schreier, which is impeccable when it comes to leaks, came forward and said this: I ran these bullet points by a few people. While it's true that 343 is focused on multiplayer, the stuff about campaign DLC being scrapped is false. I don't think that there was much of that planned in the first place, and a lot of this is either wrong or just speculation. This also lines up with what Jez Corden over at Windows Central said as he responded to MVG, saying that this rumor was false. Jez said there was never any campaign DLC in active development. I don't know how you can scrap something that didn't exist. He then later on said, just boosting this for visibility from a little while ago, from what I've heard via multiple sources, Halo Infinite's campaign DLC never existed beyond conversations. Focus has been entirely on live service. So there you go. If you have previously heard this rumor from somewhere, you can just go ahead and disregard it. It has been debunked. And truthfully, and this is just my own perspective, but I do think that Halo is going to have a perfectly fine future going forward. Unfortunately, some people were laid off, and that's always an awful thing to hear. I genuinely do feel for those people, but at the same time, 343 still has a large workforce, and I'm sure that they are hard at work on working on the future of Halo going forward, and this is alongside other studios as well, such as Certain Affinity. Now, speaking of concern, though, let's just go and talk about Forspoken. This is set up to be a big AAA PlayStation 5 console exclusive developed by Square Enix's Luminous Studios, which previously developed Final Fantasy XV. Now, as a fan of Final Fantasy XV myself, yes, I know some people didn't like that game. I did personally, and because of that, I've been hopeful that Forspoken will end up being a good game. Though, and here's the thing, I am using that word hopeful for a reason. See, the problem here is that it feels like the more they've shown of this game, the more it's received a tepid response from fans, the more it's become a major question mark rather than being this for sure fire hit. And that was on full display with its recent gameplay demo. It didn't necessarily seem to wow fans. Despite all that, though, I've still kind of remained cautiously optimistic, which is actually a phrase that I used last year with Pokemon Legends Arceus. Interestingly enough, that ended up being one of my favorite games last year, so hopefully we can kind of repeat that with Forspoken. However, the reason that we're talking about it today is because it appears that Square Enix is limiting which outlets receive Forspoken review codes. This was brought forth by the Video Games Chronicle, which noted that this is an extremely rare occurrence for them. Others have since claimed similar things, including RPG Site, Force Gaming, and Windows Central. So you can just kind of take that as you will. There's already kind of concern about whether or not this game will be good, and this could be yet another red flag that Square Enix isn't necessarily confident in this game, but I guess we'll see soon enough. Forspoken does release next week for the PlayStation 5 and PC on January 24th, but if you are specifically waiting for those reviews, it sounds like there's going to be a little bit of a wait with some outlets out there. Alright, so let's go and talk about this Nintendo Switch successor. We are moving into the Nintendo Switch's 6th year on the market, and history kind of tells us that there's a pretty good chance that its successor is inbound. Typically, Nintendo releases a new console about every 5 to 7 years, with the original NES being the longest at 7 years. Other than the NES, though, none has gone longer than 6 years without a new console. On top of that, to start 2023, there was some outlets claiming that they had heard Zelda Tears of the Kingdom will be the last major first-party release for the Switch, as they're now focusing their efforts on their next console. Now, it is a little debatable on what actually qualifies as a major release, but nonetheless, with all of that, it sounds like a Switch successor could be relatively imminent. Though, hang on, it might not be necessarily as imminent as some were expecting. So, a few things have happened over the last 48 hours, and we'll first start off with this Nikki report here. I really don't know how to pronounce their name. I'll just kind of post it on the screen. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they posted an article claiming that Nintendo has begun negotiations with suppliers regarding production of its next generation console, and that they don't expect it to release until the second half of 2024. So that kind of puts a whole different spin on the speculation of when this device will release. While I think most of us are expecting a 2024 release, I feel like a lot of us were thinking maybe it could be the first half of the year, similar to what they did with the Switch. I know I've previously said this myself even. Now, to be fair though, the Switch launch was under very different circumstances. At that time, Nintendo was very much struggling with the Wii U, so they wanted to get the Switch out the door ASAP. They also didn't necessarily have to worry about when the Switch was announced and whether it would hurt their momentum, considering the Wii U, I mean, it basically had no momentum ever in the first place. This time around, though, if they were to announce a Switch successor, let's say in 2023, and then released it in early 2024, that could actually majorly impact their momentum going into this year's holiday. So releasing in the second half of 2024 in that regard does make sense. But more so, because the Switch is still selling incredibly well. That is something that we have to keep in mind. Nintendo's trying to find this perfect balance of releasing a new console, all while their current console is selling at a record-breaking pace. So they definitely don't want to cut the Switch's life too short, and that is something that was noted in this article. They said that the Switch is expected to sell 20 million units in 2023. This also aligns with what Bloomberg just reported. According to Bloomberg, they claim that Nintendo actually plans to increase Switch production in 2023 and are aiming to shift 21 million units, as they're convinced that they can manufacture more units this year and that demand remains strong. Yeah. This does not sound like a company that is set to release a new console anytime soon. In fact, I say that this is just a very unprecedented move in general. You don't usually see consoles that are 6 years old sustain this type of success. This would be incredibly impressive if they somehow managed to pull this off. And I mean, we might be looking at the best-selling console of all time when all said and done. I know there's been a lot of eyes on that for a very long time, but I mean, it might actually happen. And even more so, if they manage to manufacture 21 million units this year, I think it just kind of shows you Nintendo, they don't have to be in a rush to release the Switch's successor. There is one other part to this story, though. Nate the Hate and John Linneman from Digital Foundry, both of them as well on Nate the Hate's podcast, said that they're expecting a late 2024 release. So everything is just suddenly lining up for late 2024. If all of this does come to fruition, though, you do have to kind of wonder, what games does Nintendo have planned for this year, and really even next? Of course, there's Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. We all know about that game, obviously, but what comes after that? Metroid Prime 4, maybe a new Mario. There's been rumors about a Donkey Kong game as well. I mean, there are some possibilities. I still do believe that Metroid Prime 4, though, would be a great launch game for their next console. There's a lot of rumors that points to GameCube remasters and remakes, but nonetheless, it'll be very interesting to see what they have planned going forward if we really do have to wait about 20 months before seeing that eventual Switch successor. Hopefully, a Nintendo Direct will come relatively soon, but let me know what you all think about this in the comments below. When do you think that Switch successor will release? Now, we also got some new information on what Obsidian Entertainment is up to. They've been very busy since being acquired by Xbox. I think that if you look at their output so far, they're building a case of really being one of Xbox's best acquisitions thus far. The thing is, though, is that since Microsoft also acquired Bethesda, with the two being under the same umbrella now, I mean, you have these two powerhouses of RPG studios, and with the history that they've had with one another, there's been a lot of talk about the possibility of Obsidian working on a new Fallout game. See, the thing is that Obsidian, they have a lot of history with the Fallout franchise, not just Bethesda, but just with the Fallout franchise in general. The Obsidian CEO, Fergus, was actually involved with the production of the first two games, and not only that, but Obsidian is also the studio behind the fan favorite Fallout New Vegas. To this day, many fans claim that it's among the very best in the entire series, which is kind of amazing to think about considering that game was developed in like 18 months. What Obsidian managed to pull off in just 18 months is still absolutely incredible to this day, and pretty much since then, fans have salivated over the idea of a sequel where Obsidian will get more time and a bigger budget. Well, here we are now with both Bethesda and Obsidian under the same Xbox umbrella, and interestingly enough, last year, there were some reports that it could actually happen. At the very least, there appeared to be discussions about a new Fallout game developed by Obsidian, and even Obsidian's Josh Sawyer publicly seemed interested in this idea. Well, Obsidian CEO Fergus, in a recent interview with Game Pressure, talked about it as well, and had this to say: "We're not working on Fallout, and we haven't even talked about what it could be. Our plate is pretty full with Avowed, Grounded, and Outer Worlds 2. I don't know when we're going to start talking about new games, maybe towards the end of next year. We just have to see what's going on. That's the best way to say it. There's nothing in the plans, nothing on a piece of paper that says that." So on one side, that might not necessarily be what you want to hear. But hang on, there's still more to the story, as he also continues on to say this: "But I'll stick to what I said. I would love to make another Fallout before I retire. I don't know when that is. I don't have a date of my retirement. It's funny, you could say I'm already 52 or only 52. It's one of those two depending on the day. My hope is that it'll happen, but we'll have to wait and see." So, yeah. Go ahead and add Fergus to the list as well. This is yet another key Obsidian member that publicly is stating they want to do another Fallout game. Now, at the same time, he confirms it's not in development right now, so this could be a long wait if it ever indeed does happen. But what I kind of gathered here is that when they start talking about what to do next, which appears to be right around the end of next year, you can absolutely guarantee that Fallout will be a candidate. In fact, I'll go and say that it might be a very strong candidate. As you can see here, you already have two key members that wants to make a new Fallout game. But more so, if you think about it, Bethesda likely won't have Fallout plans for the foreseeable future. Their next game after Starfield is The Elder Scrolls 6. So they'll be busy with that for quite a while, and that kind of leaves some questions for the Fallout franchise. So maybe Obsidian can kind of take up the mantle and work on a new Fallout title, while Bethesda is working on some of their other major games. If anything, though, what I can kind of say here is that I think Xbox is pretty set for big RPGs. Obsidian, Bethesda, you have NXL, all under the same umbrella. Yeah, I think Western RPG fans are going to have a lot to look forward to coming from Xbox in the coming years. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all to predict Forspoken's Metacritic score. This is something that we kind of discussed a little bit ago. There does definitely seem to be a tepid response when it comes to this game. So I wanted to see your all's thoughts and what your expectations are. And as you can see here, most of you all are expecting to land right in between that 70 to 79 range. 52% of you all did vote for that. 22% of you all voted for 60 to 69. 14% of you all voted 80 to 89. 9% of you all voted for 59 and below. And then only 2% of you all voted for 90 to 100. So this just kind of lines up with the concern I feel like that's kind of surrounding this game. Even me, I'm cautiously optimistic about this game. I hope it turns out to be good, but just based off the response that I have seen from the demo, and that's what I'm solely basing my opinion off right now, them not giving review codes to outlets, that's just kind of another red flag. But especially with the fans' reaction, that's the bigger concern for me. We have a playable demo out there, and fans have not reacted overly strong to that. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go with that 70 to 79 range as well. I hope that it does better than that, but I guess we'll see here soon enough. Reviews will start to go live this Monday, though unfortunately it does appear that, again, some outlets will not be able to review it right away. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.